Serenity Blackwood, 32, stared at her phone in disbelief. The message from her mother glowed accusingly. "We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate. Don't bother coming back." 10 years of minimal contact, and now this, after she'd returned only to bury her father. The family home she'd grown up in now fortress-like against her. What could justify such cold finality? Blood loyalty, she was discovering, meant nothing when family secrets threatened to surface. And her mother's desperate action had just unleashed a decade of buried truths. Before I dive deeper into how my entire family betrayed me after my father's death, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoy family drama and justice served, hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling community. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end to see how karma eventually came knocking on my mother's newly locked door. The flight back to Oak Ridge, Connecticut had been a blur. When I received the call about Dad's heart attack, I immediately booked the first available flight from New York. 10 years had passed since I'd left my hometown, building a successful career as a marketing executive for a Fortune 500 company. I'd kept in touch with Dad through weekly phone calls and occasional visits when he'd come to the city, but those moments were carefully orchestrated to avoid my mother, Patricia. Our relationship had always been strained, but I never imagined she would lock me out of my childhood home. The funeral was exactly as Dad would have hated it, formal, stuffy, with my mother playing the grieving widow to perfection. Her black Chanel dress and pearl necklace seemed more appropriate for a business meeting than mourning the love of her supposed life. My younger sister Olivia, 29, stood beside her, a mirror image of our mother's composed grief, occasionally shooting daggers at me with her eyes. Mason, my 30-year-old brother, kept his distance from both of them, offering me a stiff hug that felt more obligatory than comforting. "He asked about you at the end," Mason whispered, when Mother was preoccupied with the pastor. "He wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of." I didn't understand what he meant then. Dad's estate had always been clear. The family business would be split among the three of us, with Mother maintaining control of the family home. At least that's what I'd been led to believe. During the reception at the house, I noticed several strange interactions. Dad's business partner, George, approached me with an expression that bordered on pity. "Serenity, it's good that you came. Your father was worried you wouldn't." "Why wouldn't I come to my own father's funeral?" George shifted uncomfortably. "Well, given everything that's happened. But I suppose you don't know the whole story, do you?" Before I could press him further, Mother appeared, steering George away with practiced efficiency. "George, the Hendersons want to discuss the charity donation," she said, giving me a look that clearly communicated I wasn't welcome in the conversation. That evening I made my way to my childhood bedroom, only to find it had been completely transformed into a home office. All traces of my existence had been erased. The ballet trophies, the honor roll certificates, the collage of high school photos, all gone. I stood in the doorway feeling like a ghost in my own past. "You're in the guest room," Olivia said, flatly, appearing behind me. "Down the hall." "What happened to my room?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "Mom redecorated after you abandoned us," she replied with a shrug. "You shouldn't be surprised. You made your choice when you left." The guest room was impersonal and cold, with generic hotel-like furnishings. I unpacked my small suitcase, planning to stay only for the weekend to help settle Dad's affairs. On the dresser sat a single family photo, one from my high school graduation. I picked it up, noticing how forced our smiles looked even then. Had we ever been a happy family, or was that just the story I told myself? Dinner that night was an exercise in passive aggression. Mother had prepared Dad's favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables, as if his absence wasn't palpable enough. "I've spoken with Mr. Peterson about your father's will," Mother announced as she precisely cut her meat. "There will be some changes from what was previously discussed." "What kind of changes?" I asked, meeting her gaze. "Nothing that concerns you directly," she replied. Your father made certain decisions in his final months that I disagree with, but we'll address those privately. Mason studied his plate intently while Olivia nodded in agreement with Mother. I think I have a right to know if it involves our family business, I pressed. Mother set down her silverware with a precise click against the fine china. The family business has been managed without your input for a decade, Serenity. Your sudden interest now seems rather opportunistic, doesn't it? The accusation hung in the air like a noxious gas. I looked to Mason for support, but he avoided my eyes. I never stopped caring about Dad or his legacy, I said, finally. Just because I built my own career doesn't mean I abandoned his. We all make choices, Mother said dismissively. And we all live with the consequences. That night, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar bed, I wandered downstairs to Dad's study. It still smelled like him, leather-bound books and the faint trace of pipe tobacco Mother had always despised. I ran my fingers along his desk, remembering how he'd taught me about business ethics in this very room. Integrity isn't what you show the world, he'd say, it's what you do when no one is watching. In the corner bookshelf I found our old family photo albums. Pulling one from 2005, my senior year of high school, I settled into Dad's armchair and began flipping through. What I found sent a chill down my spine. Every photo featuring me prominently had been removed, leaving rectangular shadows on the pages where memories should have been. Only group shots remained, my presence seemingly tolerated rather than celebrated. Something was very wrong, and I decided then that I wouldn't be leaving after the weekend. Whatever had driven my mother to lock me out of my own family history, both figuratively and now literally, I needed to understand. Dad deserved better than this fractured legacy, and so did I. The next morning I texted Tyler Hayes, my childhood friend who'd stayed in Oak Ridge and now worked as a paralegal at Simpson & Bauer, the law firm that had handled our family's legal affairs for generations. We arranged to meet at Riverside Cafe, far enough from the family business district to avoid prying eyes. Tyler looked good. Life in a small town had treated him kindly, unlike the stress-lined faces I was accustomed to seeing in New York. His easy smile faltered, however, when I explained why I'd reached out. "I'm sorry about your dad, Ren," he said, using my old nickname. "He was a good man." Thank you. I need to know what's happening with his will. My mother is being cryptic, and I can tell something's off." Tyler fidgeted with his coffee cup. "I shouldn't be discussing this with you." "Please," I pressed. "I feel like I'm walking through a minefield blindfolded." "Dad would want me to know the truth." After a long pause, Tyler lowered his voice. "Your mother has been planning changes for months, Ren. The locks that wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision after your dad died. She consulted about changing the property deeds back in January, removing your name from any documentation." The betrayal felt physical, a blow to my chest. "Why would she do that? I don't know the full story, but—" Tyler hesitated. "The will reading is tomorrow. Mr. Peterson tried to delay it, give everyone time to grieve, but your mother insisted." "What changes did Dad make?" Tyler glanced around nervously. "I shouldn't know this, but I processed the paperwork. Your dad left controlling interest of Blackwood Industries to you, not split equally like everyone expected. Your mother and siblings get shares, but you'd effectively be running the company." The revelation stunned me. Dad had never indicated he planned to put me in charge. In fact, he'd always emphasized the importance of family equality in business. "That doesn't make sense," I murmured. "Mason has been working there since college. I've been gone for years." "That's not all," Tyler continued reluctantly. "There have been meetings, your mother, Mason, and Olivia, with James Donovan. Donovan Enterprises, our biggest competitor. The pieces weren't fitting together. Why would they meet with him, I don't know, but they've met 3 times in the past month. The last meeting was the day before your father died." I spent the afternoon driving around Oak Ridge trying to process this information. The small town hadn't changed much, the same Victorian houses, the town square with its ancient oak tree, the river where I'd spent summers swimming with Tyler and the other neighborhood kids. It all looked exactly as I remembered, yet everything felt fundamentally altered. When I returned to the house, I overheard Mother on the phone in the kitchen. "I need to handle this quickly. She's already asking questions." "No, she doesn't know about the documents." "Of course, I'm sure. After what she stole, do you think I'd leave anything important where she could find it again?" I froze in the hallway. What did she think I had stolen that evening while everyone was occupied with visitors, bringing condolence casseroles? I slipped into Dad's study again. If there were answers, they'd be here. After an hour of careful searching, I found a false bottom in his desk drawer, a trick he'd shown me as a child. Inside was a USB drive and a folder of financial documents dating back 5 years. I quickly photographed several pages with my phone, unable to take the originals without raising suspicion, and pocketed the USB drive. Later, in the privacy of the guest room, I examined my findings. The documents showed concerning irregularities in the family business, finances, large withdrawals to offshore accounts, inconsistencies in reported profits, and evidence of tax discrepancies. These had all begun after I left for college and had accelerated in recent years. The next morning, I confronted Mason in the garden, away from Mother's watchful eyes. "What's going on, Mason? And don't give me the runaround." I found Dad's financial records. His face paled. "You shouldn't be snooping around, Serenity." "It's not snooping when it's my family business, which apparently Dad left to me." "Of course he did." Mason spat, his composure cracking. "It was always you. His perfect firstborn. Do you have any idea what it's been like living in your shadow? 10 years you've been gone, and he still compared every decision I made to what Serenity would have done." I stepped back, shocked by his vehemence. "This isn't about Dad favoring me. This is about financial irregularities and secret meetings with our biggest competitor. You don't understand anything." Mason ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so, like our father, it made my heart ache. "Mom has been holding this family together while you've been off playing big shot executive in New York. You have no right to waltz back in and judge us." "What does she think I stole?" I demanded. "I heard her on the phone." Mason's laugh was bitter. "You really don't remember Olivia's recommendation letter from Professor Garcia, the one that would have gotten her into Columbia? It mysteriously disappeared from Dad's desk the week before it needed to be sent. The week you were home for spring break. Olivia had to settle for state while you were thriving at an Ivy League." The accusation blindsided me. "I never took any letter. Why would I sabotage my own sister?" "Jealousy, competition." "Mom found your acceptance letter in the trash can in your room that same week. She figured you were worried about Olivia outshining you at your precious Columbia." My mind raced. I had thrown away my acceptance letter, but not out of jealousy. I'd already decided on Harvard by then. Columbia had been my safety school. As I walked away from Mason, confusion clouded my thoughts. Had I unknowingly caused such harm? Was my memory failing me? The doubt was insidious, creeping through cracks in my certainty. That afternoon, an email arrived from an anonymous account. "Your father wanted you to have this." Attached was a file containing years of bank statements showing systematic transfers from Blackwood Industries to a private account under Patricia Blackwood's name. My mother had been embezzling from the family business for years. Armed with this new evidence, I steeled myself for confrontation. I found Mother in the sunroom, calmly arranging flowers as if it were any ordinary day and not the afternoon before her husband's will reading. "We need to talk about the company finances," I said without preamble. She didn't look up from her roses. "There's nothing to discuss. You've been gone for 10 years. The business concerns aren't yours anymore. I have documentation showing you've been embezzling from Dad's company." I placed printed copies of the bank statements on the table beside her. "Care to explain the offshore accounts?" Mother finally looked up, her expression unnervingly calm. You always were skilled at finding things that weren't yours to find. That's not a denial. I don't owe you explanations, Serenity. She stood smoothing her immaculate slacks. But since you're insistent on playing detective, perhaps we should have a family meeting. Clear the air before tomorrow's theatrics at the lawyer's office. An hour later, we gathered in the formal living room, a space reserved for Christmas and other obligatory family functions. Mother sat regally in her wingback chair, Olivia perched on the sofa beside her. Mason stood by the fireplace, arms crossed defensively. Serenity has concerns about the family finances, Mother announced as if introducing a mildly interesting topic for dinner conversation. She believes I've been. What was your colorful term, dear? Embezzling. The way she said it made me sound irrational. I held up the documents. These transfers speak for themselves. Over $2 million moved to private accounts in your name. Money that was rightfully mine, Mother replied smoothly. Your father and I had an arrangement. An arrangement that required hidden accounts, tax evasion, what our daughter fails to mention. Mother addressed Mason and Olivia is her own betrayal of this family. Years ago, Serenity discovered some preliminary financial plans, early versions of the arrangement your father and I eventually formalized. Rather than asking us about them like an adult, she went behind my back to your father, painting me as some sort of criminal. I remembered the incident she was referring to. I was 17 and had accidentally found accounting discrepancies while helping Dad organize tax documents for a school project. The numbers hadn't matched, and when I'd shown Dad, he'd looked troubled, but assured me he would handle it. You were stealing even back then, I realized aloud, and Dad caught you because of me. Mother's smile was brittle. What I was doing was protecting this family's future. Your father's excessive charitable donations and outdated business ethics were limiting our potential. I simply redirected funds to more appropriate investments. You call hiding money in offshore accounts appropriate investments? Don't be naive, Serenity Mother scoffed. The business world isn't the ethical fantasy your father pretended it was. After you left, he became increasingly reckless with company resources, funding his pet environmental projects, turning down lucrative opportunities because they weren't sustainable. Someone had to be practical. Olivia spoke up, her voice hard. You've always thought you were better than us. Coming home for Dad's funeral doesn't erase a decade of absence. I was building my career, I defended, and Dad supported that decision. Of course he did, Mason interjected. He idolized you, even after you left, while the rest of us had to live with the daily reality of his disappointment. That's not fair, I protested. Dad was proud of both of you. He told me about your accomplishments all the time. Enough, Mother cut in. The fact remains, Serenity, that you betrayed this family first. Your interference created years of distrust in my marriage. Your father and I could have had a true partnership if not for your meddling. So that justifies stealing from his company, hiding assets, meeting with James Donovan to sell him the business out from under us. Mother's eyes narrowed dangerously. You've been gone too long to understand our current business climate. Donovan Enterprises represents a strategic alliance opportunity, nothing more. The conversation devolved from there, accusations flying from all sides. Olivia brought up the recommendation letter again, her childhood dreams apparently crushed by my alleged sabotage. Mason detailed years of feeling inadequate in my shadow. Mother orchestrated their grievances like a conductor, adding her own complaints about my ingratitude and disloyalty. I never stole Olivia's letter, I maintained firmly. I would never do that to my own sister. The evidence suggests otherwise, Mother replied coldly. Just as these financial irregularities you're so concerned about have perfectly reasonable explanations. Your problem, Serenity, has always been seeing the world in black and white. Some of us live in reality where compromise is necessary. I stood shaking with anger and hurt. Dad deserved better than this, than all of you using his death to rewrite history and justify your betrayals. Your father wasn't the saint you idolized, Mother shot back. He made plenty of compromises, including protecting you from the consequences of your actions. What is that supposed to mean? Ask yourself why he never confronted you about the letter she suggested with cruel satisfaction. Why he paid for your Harvard education despite knowing what you'd done to your sister. He covered for you, Serenity, because he couldn't bear to see his golden child tarnished. I left the house in a daze, driving aimlessly through town until I found myself at the riverbank where Tyler and I had spent countless summer days as teenagers. I called him voice-breaking as I recounted the confrontation. "Can I stay with you tonight?" I asked finally. "I can't go back there." "Of course," he agreed without hesitation. "My spare room is yours as long as you need it." That evening, as I settled into Tyler's modest guest room, my phone chimed with the message that would crystallize everything. "We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate. Don't bother coming back." Tyler helped me continue investigating, using his access at the law firm to look into the recent activities surrounding Blackwood Industries. What we discovered was alarming. Mother had been systematically selling off company assets to subsidiaries she controlled personally. The meetings with Donovan weren't about strategic alliances, but about selling the core patents that made our family business valuable. The next revelation came from an unexpected source. Mr. Peterson, Dad's attorney, called me directly the night before the will reading. "Serenity, I can't say much, but you should know your father left something for you at First National. Box 1128. He was explicit that only you should access it." The next morning, before the scheduled will reading, I visited the bank and used the key Dad had given me years ago for emergencies. Inside the safety deposit box was Dad's real will dated just 3 months earlier, and a sealed letter addressed to me in his distinctive handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened my father's letter while sitting in my parked car outside the bank. His familiar handwriting brought an immediate lump to my throat. "My dearest Serenity, if you're reading this, I've failed in my most important duty as your father, protecting you from injustice. I pray you'll forgive me for my cowardice and for the pain my silence has caused. I've known about your mother's financial improprieties for years, dating back to when you first brought those discrepancies to my attention when you were 17. What you found was merely the tip of the iceberg. Patricia has been systematically diverting funds since the early days of our business, small amounts at first that grew as our success increased. When you discovered those initial irregularities, I confronted her. She denied everything, of course, but the evidence was irrefutable. Rather than expose her and destroy our family, I made a devil's bargain. I would monitor her activities but allow her some control over certain financial aspects of the business, provided the core company remained untouched. It was a compromise that has haunted me every day since. The rift between you and your mother grew wider after that confrontation. I believe she never forgave you for what she perceived as your betrayal, though in reality, you had simply shown the integrity I had always tried to instill in you. There's something else you must know. Your sister's recommendation letter for Columbia, you were never responsible for its disappearance. Patricia deliberately removed it herself and let everyone believe you had taken it. She confessed this to me during a heated argument 5 years ago, claiming she'd done it to protect the family by keeping Olivia close to home. She feared Olivia would follow your independent path if allowed to attend an elite university away from her influence. I failed you by not defending you against these accusations. I told myself I was preserving the peace, but in truth I was simply too weak to stand against Patricia's manipulations. Over the years, she became increasingly controlling, isolating me from friends and business associates who might question her narrative. Your siblings, I fear, have been similarly manipulated, turned against you through carefully crafted lies and half-truths. I've left Blackwood Industries to you because despite the distance and years apart, you're the only one I trust to restore its integrity. Enclosed with this letter is documentation of Patricia's systematic embezzlement, tax fraud, and corporate malfeasance. There are also records of offshore accounts where she's hidden substantial assets that rightfully belong to the company. Use this information wisely, Serenity. My greatest regret is not being brave enough to stand up to Patricia's machinations while I lived. I've left copies of these documents with Mr. Peterson as well, though I fear Patricia may have already taken steps to discredit or manipulate him. Whatever you decide to do with this information, know that I have always been proud of you and your unwavering moral compass. The very quality that drove your mother to push you away. I hope someday your siblings will see the truth and find their way back to you. With all my love and deepest regrets, Dad. I sat in stunned silence after reading the letter, tears streaming down my face. The validation of my innocence brought both relief and renewed anger. All these years, Mother had deliberately driven a wedge between me and my siblings, between me and the family business I'd grown up loving. The additional documents proved beyond doubt that Mother had been embezzling on a massive scale, nearly 30% of the company's profits diverted to her personal accounts over the past decade. There were also records of her systematic undermining of Dad's authority, with business partners' forged signatures on critical documents, and evidence of tax evasion that could result in serious criminal charges. As I drove to the law firm for the official will reading, I wrestled with an impossible moral dilemma. Exposing Mother would destroy what remained of our family, potentially sending her to prison and leaving Mason and Olivia to deal with the fallout. Yet allowing her to continue her deception would betray Dad's final wish and the company he'd built with decades of honest work. The formal will reading was set for 2:00 p.m., with a memorial dinner planned afterward at the Oak Ridge Country Club, an event Mother had arranged with Dad's business associates and extended family. It would be the perfect opportunity to confront her with the truth, but was I prepared for the consequences? I decided to speak with Tyler one more time before making my decision. He reviewed the documents with his legal training, confirming their authenticity and the seriousness of the crimes they revealed. "This isn't just family drama, Ren," he said gravely. "This is criminal fraud on a significant scale. Your mother could face serious jail time. And the company, what happens to it if this becomes public? There would be investigations, certainly. Potential fines. But with your father's legitimate will naming you as successor, and evidence that you were unaware of the fraud, the business could survive under your leadership." And my siblings, Tyler hesitated. "That depends on their level of involvement. If they were knowing participants in the fraud, they could face charges too. If they were manipulated by your mother, they might be legally clear, but I'd still be the one destroying their world," I finished for him. "Sometimes the truth has to hurt before healing can begin," Tyler said quietly. "Your father clearly believed you were strong enough to handle this, or he wouldn't have left it to you." As I prepared for the memorial dinner, I made my decision. The truth, however painful, was the only path forward that honored Dad's legacy. I slipped the original documents into my purse, squared my shoulders, and prepared to face the family that had locked me out, not just from their home, but from their hearts. Hey everyone, I know you're probably on the edge of your seats, wondering what I decided to do at that memorial dinner. Would I expose my mother's years of manipulation and fraud in front of everyone? Would my siblings stand with her, or finally see the truth? The moment I walked into that country club was one of the most terrifying of my life, but sometimes we have to face our fears to find justice. If you're enjoying this family drama so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to catch more stories like this one. I'd also love to know in the comments if you've ever had to make a difficult decision that could change your family forever. Now, let's get back to what happened when I finally confronted my mother with the evidence. The Oak Ridge Country Club was draped in tasteful morning decor, white lilies and black ribbons, my father's portrait displayed prominently near the entrance. Mother had spared no expense, ensuring the event projected the image of dignified grief she'd cultivated since Dad's death. About 50 people had gathered, business associates, extended family, and lifelong friends of my father. I arrived 15 minutes late, parking my rental car far from the entrance to avoid detection. Tyler had agreed to come separately as my moral support, though he couldn't intervene directly in family matters. Through the large windows I could see Mother holding court, accepting condolences with Olivia beside her like a lady in waiting. Mason stood near the bar looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. When I pushed through the double doors, the subtle hush that fell over the room was almost comical. Mother's face registered shock, then fury as she quickly composed herself. She whispered something to an elderly man beside her, Mr. Peterson's partner at the law firm, and began making her way toward me with determined steps. "You weren't invited," she hissed, when she reached me, positioning herself to block my entrance to the main room. "This is a private memorial for those who truly cared about your father. That's why I'm here," I replied, evenly loud enough for those nearby to hear. "No one cared more about Dad than I did." "Please leave before you cause a scene," she insisted, maintaining her perfect hostess smile, though her eyes were glacial. "Haven't you done enough damage?" I stood my ground. "I'm not going anywhere, Mother. In fact, I have something to share with everyone here, something Dad wanted them to know." She gripped my arm with surprising strength. "Security will remove you if necessary." "Try it," I challenged. "I'm sure everyone would love to see the grieving widow having her husband's daughter forcibly removed from his memorial dinner." Our standoff drew attention. Mason approached cautiously, eyes darting between us. "What's going on? Your sister is leaving," Mother stated firmly. "Actually, I'm just about to make a toast to Dad," I countered, pulling free of her grip and stepping around her before she could stop me. I walked directly to the center of the room where a microphone had been set up for speeches. The room quieted as I tapped it gently. Mother stood frozen, perhaps calculating the social damage of making a scene versus letting me speak. "Thank you all for coming tonight to honor my father, Charles Blackwood," I began. "For those who don't know me, I'm Serenity, his firstborn. I've spent the past decade in New York building my career as he taught me to do, with integrity, determination, and unwavering ethical standards." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many knew about the family rift but not its cause. Mother began moving toward me again, Olivia in tow, both wearing identical expressions of controlled panic. "My father was an extraordinary man who built Blackwood Industries from nothing into the success it is today. What many of you don't know is how that legacy has been undermined from within." I removed the documents from my purse, holding them up. "I have here evidence of systematic embezzlement, tax fraud, and corporate malfeasance perpetrated against Blackwood Industries over the past decade." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Mother reached the microphone, attempting to take it from me. "My daughter is clearly disturbed by grief," she announced, her voice strained. "Perhaps we should give her some privacy. The fraud was orchestrated by Patricia Blackwood," I continued loudly, stepping away from her grasp. "My mother has stolen over 30% of company profits, hidden assets in offshore accounts, and manipulated company records to cover her tracks. She's also been negotiating to sell company patents to our biggest competitor, Donovan Enterprises." "This is slander," Mother cried, abandoning her composed facade. "Security. Remove her immediately." Two uniformed men hesitated at the door, clearly uncomfortable with the unfolding drama. "Everything I'm saying is documented here." I held up the papers again, and in my father's own words, "He discovered the fraud years ago but kept silent to protect the family. His final act was ensuring the truth would come to light." I turned directly to Mother, whose face had gone deathly pale. "He also revealed that you deliberately sabotaged Olivia's college acceptance by stealing her recommendation letter, then blamed me for it. You've spent years turning my siblings against me based on a lie you created." Olivia's gasp was audible even without a microphone. She stared at Mother, confusion and dawning horror in her expression. "Mom, is that true?" "Of course not," Mother scoffed, but her voice lacked conviction. "Serenity is clearly unstable. Charles's death has triggered some kind of breakdown. I have Dad's letter, I interrupted, pulling out the handwritten pages. Would you like me to read what he had to say about you, Mother? About how you isolated him from friends and colleagues? About how you manipulated everyone around you for years? George, Dad's longtime business partner, stepped forward. Patricia, what is she talking about? Nothing but delusions, Mother insisted, looking increasingly desperate. Serenity has always been jealous of our family's success after she abandoned us. Now she's fabricating these ridiculous accusations. I've already provided copies to the authorities, I interrupted. It was a bluff, but one I planned to make real. Dad kept meticulous records. The forensic accounting will confirm everything. The room had become chaotically divided, with people clustering in shocked discussion groups. Some of Dad's oldest friends approached me asking to see the documents. Others stood loyally by Mother, though uncertainty shadowed their faces. I loved your father, Mother suddenly announced, her voice breaking. Everything I did was to secure our family's future. The business world isn't kind to people with Charles's outdated ideals. It was the closest thing to an admission she would offer, and it sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. Mason approached, slowly extending his hand for the documents. I handed him a copy, watching as he scanned the pages, his expression hardening with each line. Did you know? I asked, quietly. He shook his head, almost imperceptibly. Not all of it. I suspected the Donovan deal wasn't legitimate, but... He looked up, eyes troubled. I didn't want to believe Mom would do something like this. Olivia had backed away from Mother, tears streaming down her face. You told me Serenity stole my letter because she was jealous. You said she couldn't stand the thought of me following her to Colombia. I was protecting you, Mother insisted. You weren't ready to leave, that wasn't your decision to make, Olivia cried. You ruined my relationship with my sister over a lie. As the family drama unfolded, Dad's business associates began quietly conferring amongst themselves. George approached me with several others. We've had concerns about financial discrepancies for some time, he admitted. Charles always assured us everything was in order, but in recent months, he hinted that changes were coming. He glanced at Mother, who was now surrounded by a dwindling circle of supporters. We'll need to see all the documentation, of course, and there will need to be a full audit. The evening devolved from there. Mother's carefully orchestrated memorial transformed into a corporate crisis meeting in one section of the room, while a family implosion continued in another. Several business associates expressed their intention to withdraw from pending deals until the situation was clarified. Extended family members chose sides, some leaving in disgust at the public airing of dirty laundry, others staying to offer support, though to which faction varied. As the gathering finally began to disperse, Mother approached me one last time, her voice low and dangerous. You've made a grave mistake tonight, Serenity. I still have resources you can't imagine. By the time my lawyers finish with you, you won't have a reputation left to salvage, let alone control of the company. Is that a threat? I asked calmly. It's a promise, she replied. I'll see you in court. As she walked away, Tyler appeared at my side. You okay? I exhaled shakily. No, but I think I did what Dad would have wanted. Mason approached cautiously. The family lawyer wants to meet tomorrow morning. All of us. His expression was guarded, but no longer hostile. I didn't know about Olivia's letter. Or most of the financial stuff. You have to believe that. I want to, I told him honestly. But there's a lot of trust to rebuild. Olivia stood several feet away, clearly uncertain whether to join us. When I met her eyes, she managed a tentative nod, the first acknowledgement between us that wasn't tinged with animosity. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. Mother proved true to her word. Within 48 hours, I was served with papers alleging defamation, malicious business interference, and a host of other charges. The family that had already metaphorically locked me out was now attempting to legally exclude me from my inheritance and silence me permanently. The weeks that followed were a blur of attorneys' offices, court appearances, and painful revelations. Mother had indeed been hiding substantial assets, not just from the company, but from her own family. The offshore accounts contained far more money than even Dad had discovered. I moved into a small apartment in downtown Oak Ridge, accepting that this fight would require my presence for the foreseeable future. Tyler became my rock, providing not just legal connections, but emotional support when the weight of family betrayal threatened to crush me. "She's trying to drain you financially," Tyler warned, after yet another motion was filed by Mother's expensive legal team. "Patricia knows that even if she eventually loses, she can exhaust your resources in the meantime." "I'm not backing down," I insisted. "Not after what she did to all of us." The case attracted attention beyond our small town. Former employees of Blackwood Industries began coming forward with additional evidence of Mother's misconduct, altered records, intimidation tactics, instances where they'd been instructed to perform questionable financial maneuvers. "Your father protected her for years," one longtime secretary confided. "He would revise reports she'd tampered with, make excuses for discrepancies. We all knew something was wrong, but Mr. Blackwood commanded such loyalty that none of us felt right questioning him." The family remained fractured throughout the proceedings. Mason maintained a careful neutrality in public, though he began privately sharing information about Mother's recent business activities that proved invaluable to my case. Olivia experienced what seemed like a crisis of faith, gradually recognizing the extent of Mother's manipulation. "She controlled everything," Olivia admitted during a rare coffee meeting between us. "Who I could be friends with, where I could go to school, what career I should pursue. I thought it was because she cared, but now—" "She does care," I said, surprising myself with the defense. "In her way. She just cares about control more." Olivia studied her cup thoughtfully. "I've spent 10 years hating you for something you never did. And I spent 10 years thinking my family didn't want me," I replied. "We both lost a decade we can't get back." As the legal proceedings continued, Mother's desperate tactics escalated. Investigators discovered she had been hiding Dad's assets in a complex network of offshore accounts, some dating back 15 years. The scope of the deception was staggering. Mother attempted to maintain her public persona throughout presenting herself as the wronged widow being persecuted by her ungrateful daughter. But as evidence mounted, her support dwindled. Business associates distanced themselves, social invitations dried up, and eventually, even her most loyal friends began questioning her version of events. Mason remained the most conflicted. During a particularly difficult deposition, he finally explained his position. "I knew Mom was controlling, even manipulative," he admitted under oath. "But I believed she was acting in the company's best interest. Dad seemed to defer to her on financial matters, so I assumed he approved of her methods." He looked at me apologetically. "It was easier to blame you for leaving than to question what was happening at home." Mother, for her part, remained defiant even as her legal position deteriorated. "You're destroying everything your father and I built," she accused during a courthouse confrontation. "Is that what you wanted? To ruin this family completely? You did that yourself," I replied, "the moment you decided your control was more important than the truth." 3 months into the legal battle, a crucial breakthrough came when investigators located one of Mother's former assistants who had relocated to Arizona years earlier. This woman possessed copies of correspondence proving Mother had deliberately sabotaged not only Olivia's college prospects but several of my early career opportunities, intercepting job offers and recommendations, ensuring I would feel forced to move far from Oak Ridge. The revelation of this systematic campaign to isolate me from the family shocked even Mother's remaining supporters. Olivia, upon hearing the testimony, finally broke down completely. "She always said she was protecting me, protecting all of us," she sobbed when we spoke afterward. How could she have done this? The court proceedings culminated in a tense week of hearings where Mother's attorneys fought desperately to exclude evidence and discredit witnesses. The final blow came when the judge ruled that a forensic audit of all Blackwood family and business accounts would proceed with no exceptions for personal or offshore holdings. Mother's facade finally cracked completely during her final testimony. When presented with irrefutable evidence of her decades of manipulation and fraud, she abandoned her claims of innocence. "Everything I did was necessary," she declared, her voice cold with conviction. Charles was too weak to make difficult decisions. His precious ethics were luxuries we couldn't afford in today's business world. I secured our family's future while he played the moral businessman. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, was unmoved. "Mrs. Blackwood, the evidence suggests you systematically defrauded not just your company but your family, including your husband and children. Your actions appear motivated not by necessity but by a desire for control and personal gain. You don't understand what it takes to succeed," Mother insisted. "Serenity certainly doesn't. She's been protected her entire life, first by Charles, now by all of you taking her side. None of you understand what I've sacrificed." Her words echoed in the courtroom, damning in their lack of remorse. 2 days later, the judge issued her ruling. The original will would stand with controlling interest in Blackwood Industries transferred to me. Mother's counterclaims were dismissed, and the court ordered a complete financial investigation that would likely lead to criminal charges for tax evasion and fraud. As we left the courthouse, Mason approached me hesitantly. "What happens now to the company too?" He gestured vaguely. "All of us, that depends," I replied honestly. "I need people I can trust running the company with me. People who know the business but aren't compromised by what happened." "And you think that could include me, after everything?" "I think Dad believed in second chances," I said. "I'd like to try." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. Trust would need to be rebuilt slowly with transparent actions rather than words. But it was a beginning. As for Mother, her world was collapsing around her. The family home would need to be sold to repay debts she had incurred in Dad's name. Her social standing, so carefully cultivated over decades, lay in tatters. And the legal consequences of her actions were still unfolding, with criminal charges likely in the coming months. She had locked me out of my childhood home with a simple text message. Now karma had locked her out of the life she had built on lies. 6 months after that fateful text message, I stood in the newly renovated offices of Blackwood Industries, watching the sunset paint the Oak Ridge skyline in hues of orange and gold. So much had changed. Mother was awaiting trial on multiple charges of fraud and tax evasion, having exhausted her legal options for delays. The family home, the one I'd been locked out of, had been sold to cover legal fees and restitution payments. Olivia had joined me at the company using her business degree in a role that suited her analytical skills. Our relationship was cautiously rebuilding, one honest conversation at a time. I spent so many years believing her version of events she'd admitted during a late-night strategy session. It's still hard to separate truth from manipulation. Mason struggled more with the transition. His loyalty had been deeply divided, and adapting to leadership under my direction challenged his pride. But he was trying, bringing valuable institutional knowledge and gradually accepting that Dad's decision to place me in charge hadn't been arbitrary favoritism. Tyler had become more than a friend through the ordeal, our shared history and mutual support blossoming into something deeper that neither of us had anticipated. Some good had to come from all this, he'd joked, when we finally acknowledged the shift in our relationship. As for me, I'd learned that family extends beyond blood ties. The true meaning of loyalty isn't blind allegiance, but holding loved ones accountable while offering pathways to redemption. Dad's final act wasn't just exposing Mother's deception, it was giving us all a chance to rebuild on a foundation of truth, however painful. The locks had been changed on our childhood home, but in the end, it was Mother who found herself truly locked out from the family she'd tried to control, and the life she'd constructed through deception. Sometimes karma delivers justice in ways we never expect, closing doors that need to stay shut and opening new ones toward healing. If you've ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted, especially family, I hope my story gives you courage. Truth eventually finds its way to the light, even when others try to lock it away. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've experienced similar family revelations or moments when karma finally caught up to someone who wronged you. Don't forget to hit the like button if this story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life family drama, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that justice can eventually prevail. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Sometimes the most painful locked doors lead us exactly where we need to go.